Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. This is Erica Oriens from the Michigan Center for Student Success. Welcome to our annual STAR Data Reporting webinar. Thanks for joining us on this beautiful morning. Before we get started, I wonder if those of you who are on the line, if you could go to your participation panel and raise your hand so I can make sure you can hear me. Okay, thanks, Angie. Perfect. All right, thanks, everybody. So I'm going to turn it over to Bob Murphy to do a little welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Erica, and good morning, everyone. We're happy that you could join us today. I am Bob Murphy with the Michigan Association of State Universities. I would like to certainly thank CEPI for their annual training here on STAR. I know that this is, there have been more questions every year with the institutional research folks, the registrars, trying to better understand what the state is trying to accomplish, how we're accomplishing it, how we can make it more efficient, more accurate, better all around. So we certainly are glad that CEPI is taking the time today to do this webinar. There will be a second webinar in August if you have some colleagues that couldn't make it today. And in addition, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted live later on. So if any of my members have questions, please feel free to raise your hand or talk to us afterwards. And we're very glad that everyone could be here. And Erica, if you want to take it again.
Great, thanks, Bob. I'll share my welcome with the community college folks as well. This is always a popular webinar, and we really appreciate Rachel and Trevor joining us today to talk about the data collection and reporting. Before I turn it over to them, I wanted to point out in your attendee pane, you should see an orange button at the top of your screen that allows you to hide your control panel. So you can push that orange button and it'll push it over to the side if you're having trouble seeing the presenter's screen. I'll also point out in that same control panel that if you scroll down, you should see it says questions, and that is where you can enter questions, and we will be able to respond to those. Questions. Trevor, I think, will be monitoring the question pane, and Rachel will as each of the folks are talking. You may also have a chat pane in there as well, and you can include things in the chat pane if you have that. But go ahead and put your questions in the question pane so that we can monitor that. As Bob said, there'll be a recording of this that we will share with all of you after the webinar, and then we will have another session on August 13th. Which is already scheduled, and it will be the exact same, it'll be the same presentation. So you don't need to attend both, but if you have colleagues that would like to attend, I would encourage them to look at the register for the webinar on August 13th. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rachel and Trevor.
Thanks, Erica. Yep, so as Erica said, Rachel and I are here from CEPI. Just to introduce ourselves, just in case you're new to data reporting, my name's Trevor Youngquist. I've been with CEPI for about a year and a half now. I work in K-12 data in addition to helping Rachel with some of the data that supports the STAR submission. So I'm going to be talking a little bit kind of broader about some of the goals of CEPI, what we do as an organization, some different applications that support the STAR submission. And so I'll be talking for the first portion here, and I'm going to have Rachel introduce herself, even though probably most of you already know her.
Good morning. This is Rachel Edmondson, and I work with Trevor at CEPI. I'm on the post-secondary data collection and reporting side, and we are looking forward to giving you this information as we do every year, and I hope that you learn something new or just confirm things that you've already known.
Yeah, and feel free to ask us questions throughout. Because we're working in tandem here, Rachel's going to be monitoring questions, answering those, and then when she's talking, vice versa. But before we get started, I really want to thank MCCA for facilitating this and letting us broadcast to everyone who's joining us. So to get started, talk a little bit about CEPI as an organization. So CEPI is really a warehouse that collects data, works with it, and then reports it back out to the public. So STEPI was founded back in 2001, and it is an organization that collects educational data all the way from early childhood, and we connect that to workforce data. We have a lot of partners in the education world to help us with collecting data, getting the requirements for data collections, and also to facilitate reporting that data out to the public in a meaningful way and giving it to institutions so that they can see how their data, paints a picture for their organization. So with STEPI collecting all of this data, we try to work as efficiently and report that data as accurately as possible. We only collect data that is legislatively mandated. So every single data field that you see in the STARR does have a legislative requirement behind it. And we really facilitate all of this data collection so that way when we hand data back to institutions, it reduces a lot of administrative burden to kind of research some of these things in your own institutions, and we try to provide a service back to you that makes data submission worthwhile. And when we get to talking about student data, especially UICs in a little bit, you'll see how the data that you submit to STEPI really ties into the P20 longitudinal data system that STEPI maintains. That's the foundational mission of STEPI, is to connect data on students from, diapers, early childhood, all the way into the workforce. And Michigan really has made a lot of strides into being a forerunner in collecting educational data. So as far as in the post-secondary world, the data that we collect really kind of gets down to the entity data. So that's going to be information about your institution. We'll see that in the EEM when I present that in a little bit here. Student demographics, that captures the UICs that STEPI returns back to institutions for each student. And there is demographics housed within the STARR collection, but all of that is tied to a UIC. Rachel can expand a little bit on these next points here, just because that really is in the STARR collection.
Right. So in the STARR, we also, as you know, collect information about the programs that the student is enrolled in at the colleges. The high school assessment is something that we get from the K-12 side. So if you're familiar with any of our reports on My School Data, so if you get the student pathways data file, you'll be able to see those high school assessment scores for each student that has enrolled or attended your college. We also collect and connect with the K-12 side when we're looking at dual enrollment and advanced coursework for students. The high school graduation status is going to be reflected in that student pathways file as well. And then as we start to collect the data in STARR, we're able to see college enrollment. So at the high school level, we'll be able to see students who graduated from a certain high school, where they're enrolling in college and how they're progressing in college. And at the college level, we're able to see that enrollment picture at each college or university, and then out to the success of those students as well.
So with all of the data systems that we're going to talk about here, different collections, applications, a foundational point with STEPI is that we have our own in-house customer support team. Back in the day, there was kind of one call center for all state applications, and we thought that it was a really great service to provide our partners in the field with one line that they can call to get application support, any kind of questions about data fields or the kind of purpose of the reporting services that we give and the collections that we host. You can get all that information from STEPI customer support. So they also process all of the agreements that lead to new users being able to submit in the EEM, get UICs, report to the STARR collection, and they also have user removal forms. And I believe earlier this week, the IHE authorized user mailing went out, and the purpose of that Yeah, so that IHE authorized user mailing, which will be coming out, the purpose of that is to really give your institution an idea of all the subscribed users that you have per collection. So that way you can see, maybe this person that was subscribed last year doesn't work for your institution anymore. You can decide to submit a user removal form, or maybe you'll find that you really only have one authorized user to be in the EEM to request UICs. And, if that person were to ever be out of the office and there was a deadline, maybe on an institutional level, you'll want to kind of coordinate other people to fill in if need be. So that authorized user mailing will be coming out soon to let you know that. CEPI customer support also provides something called helpful hints. These are found on the CEPI homepage. And these are really kind of documents geared towards the calls that they see coming in most often. So you can also request some of these helpful hints to be created. And the purpose of these helpful hints is to kind of give the kind of frequently asked questions for different content areas. They try to describe kind of on the kind of most easily digestible terms how to do certain things within applications. So common troubleshooting issues that they see commonly in the field. You can find all of those from the Help and Support tab on the CEPI homepage. And you can also request helpful hints from CEPI customer support too. So maybe NCCA as an association, maybe it's determined that there's, this common problem between institutions and, maybe you'd like some clarification from CEPI. A CEPI helpful hint might be a good place to start with getting some of that, frequently asked questions out to the field. So like I said, CEPI customer support really can help you do anything within our collections, working within our applications. And if they don't have the answer themselves, then they'll elevate those questions to those content area experts. So, STARR questions, those are going to go to Rachel. EEM and UIC questions, those are going to go to me. But at the baseline, there's a lot of questions that they'll be able to answer for you. They might also point you to some of the documentation that already exists on our CEPI webpage. So on that CEPI homepage, you'll see on this last slide, CEPI applications. You'll find some UIC documents there, but as a main landing point, you're going to want to go to the institutions of higher education. That's going to have all of those documents that are going to help you work through all the collections that go into a STARR submission. And like I said, CEPI customer support is also going to get you that security access and remove users if need be. Here is the contact information for CEPI customer support. They're available normal business hours, so Monday through Friday. There's always going to be someone who's going to pick up the phone. People who first start working with CEPI, they're surprised that a state agency has a number where you're going to, have a person who answers the phone right when you call. But that's something that CEPI thinks is really valuable with gaining that trust with our partners in the field, that way we can be accessible if you guys have any questions. Of course, if you do need to ask about specific student data and you need to share some personally identified information, that is better to do over the phone. Just because if you do send any of that information over to them in an email, if it does need to get elevated to Rachel or I, all of that PII is going to get purged out of the email. So it's best to share that information over the phone so that way it doesn't kind of get lost as it gets shuffled around in our office. So we're going to go into our first application, the Educational Entity Master. That is what we call the gatekeeper of all educational data in the state of Michigan. So it is the state of Michigan's only directory of all educational entities in the state. The EEM is really used by every single state agency that has any kind of stake in educational data. And the main kind of focus of the EEM is maintaining contact information and also issuing entity codes. So for each institution, you're going to have one entity code that is going to be used in your STARR collection and also your request for UIC collection. But more so now, because the EEM is CEPI's only public-facing application, we also store contact information. So at any time, the public can go into the EEM, query for maybe all community college presidents and say that it's a researcher who wants to reach out and get information from presidents, from provosts, from registrars, maybe from IR people. The EEM is going to be one of those, it's going to be that landing point where they're going to get that information from.
I wanted to say real quick, so another really important thing, which Trevor's probably going to talk about, but EEM I know is new to all the colleges and universities. We haven't asked you guys to update this for STEPI in the past until recently, but because of the way we're moving forward with this, it's super important that every college and university does assign an entity authorized user to be able to update EEM. We're no longer going to be going to macro to confirm like the registrar or contacts like that. And the EEM is going to be our main source of contact information for sending out communications and for people to be able to be authorized for security for different applications. So we've been sending out communications about getting them updated lately and haven't had a lot of response yet, but I just urge you to pay attention to those emails and make sure that you get somebody assigned, because within the next month or so, we won't be, using other avenues to reach out. It will be solely coming from EEM.
And really to kind of drive that point home too, I know that Rachel has been on the road a lot with the new MIPD application that has been developed to replace ACS. So there is a new contact in the EEM called MIPD Coordinator. I think it's called MIPD Data Coordinator to be exact. And that's going to be the point person at each community college for if she needs to reach out with any kind of MIPD data questions. So that's going to be one of those other really important contacts that each institution is going to want to have updated. And like Rachel said, we were in the past, or our customer support team in the past was using macro to validate all registrar and provost sign off on security forms. Moving forward, we think that because we already have, the state of Michigan's directory application, that we should be housing and maintaining those contacts ourselves, just because we are leveraging that contact data for outreach. So like Rachel said, it's going to be really imperative for moving into this upcoming STARR collection window that each institution has an entity authorized user, and that each entity authorized user adds a registrar and provost to your EEM page. Now, it's not synonymous that when you add a contact to your EEM page that they're going to have access to the EEM. It's only the entity authorized user that's going to have that access to edit each institution's page. So there is that difference where contacts are not, authorizing new people to get into the application. I just wanted to make that known. So in the past, like Rachel said, EEM data wasn't really that high stakes for higher ed institutions. There's not the same amount of settings as there are for, say, a K-12 entity where, they have to set grades and different education settings. So on a plus side for higher ed institutions, it's really easy to update the EEM because the only thing that you need to, make sure is still valid are the main email address that you want all kind of inquiries coming into your institution and also the contacts that are listed in the EEM, just because we do leverage that information, as do other state agencies, for reaching out. So with adding contacts, the public can go in and query the EEM at any time to pull any of that entity information. We sometimes do get inquiries from the field, people who are doing independent research, asking, are these contacts updated? Is this institution's information correct? So there is that activity going on, and it's really going to be important because it is so, easy for institutions to make those edits that all of that information is correct. And like we had already touched on, as we get into the STARR collection window, and also as MIPD starts opening up its own collections, all security form sign-off is going to be leveraging those registrars and provosts that are listed in the EEM. Our customer support team is only going to use that for validating lead administrator sign-off. And as you know, we're kind of getting redundant here just because we kind of spoke to our best points before we actually got to the slides, but adding that MIPD data coordinator, that's really going to give Rachel that point person, or anyone else at CEPI that point person, for as MIPD data starts coming in, we can reach out to this specific person with any questions. So maybe you're sitting there thinking that you want to be the entity authorized user. Maybe you'd like to make someone else your entity authorized user. It's actually quite easy to go in and make those edits. So once you get that security form, the EEM IHE security form submitted to CEPI, that form is located on the Institutions of Higher Education tab from that CEPI homepage. Once you submit that and you get a My Login account, you'll be able to log into the EEM. You'll go to your institution's page and you'll click the Edit Entity button. Only authorized users have that Edit Entity button, and that's going to give you the opportunity to edit all of the gold and white fields in the EEM. I don't think that there's going to be many institutions that are going to be changing, many of the fields that you see on this page. I don't think you'll be switching counties. I don't think you'll be changing your address, your web address, but you can make all those edits if need be. And at the bottom there, you'll see Add Contact. You're going to click that button and you'll add that contact information. You can add multiple contacts before you click that Save button at the bottom. You can make changes effective for the future. So there's that System Effective Date field there at the bottom left of that Edit Entity page. I don't know if institutions will be leveraging, having contacts added for the future, but that functionality is there. Or you can have those changes save with today's effective date. But whenever you add contacts, you're going to want to make sure that you save the page using that Save button at the bottom of the Edit Entity page. So Rachel is fielding questions that we're getting. Are there any that you want to talk about here?
So I know that there's been some confusion related to the security agreement process and actually gaining access to these different applications lately. We have the EEM that we're now asking for you to get access to. We were having the STARR trainings, in-person trainings, as well as our new MIPD data collection training. So there's been some confusion because there's a lot more than normal going on regarding security. But the email that was sent out recently, it went to as many people as I possibly could get it to so that the information got out. So we sent the email asking for someone to assign an authorized user for EEM and to add the contacts in there. And that went to like the registrars, the IR contacts, presidents, possibly STARR users or something like that. I'm not positive.
Yeah, I think that we also leverage authorized users in MSDS, so your student data collection, so your UIC users, your STARR users. And the purpose why we kind of encompassed all of those different contact types was just to make sure that we reached someone at each institution. And these even went out to lists that we got from Treasury for institutions that don't necessarily submit to us, just because we want to make sure that if we do ever need to leverage any of those contacts in the EEM, that it's already updated. It's in people's best interest that those edits are made.
And the list that we used regarding the registrars or the IR contacts are lists that we've had to manually put together. So either we got those contacts from Macro, or we had to go to each institution's website individually to try to find those contacts. Now, which makes the perfect sense of why we're asking to get these contacts added in EEM, so we don't have to go through that manual process anymore. If you have any questions, because I hear that there might be some confusion about what it was and what it was for, feel free to contact Trevor or I, and we can definitely help you through that process, because it's something that we are really wanting to get done here within this next month.
Yeah, and just because your institution got that mailing saying that, you needed to add an authorized user and update your contacts, that doesn't necessarily mean that your institution doesn't have an EEM user. We just wanted to make sure that everyone had access to the same point of contact. So that way, when it comes time that, these contacts do need to be in there, we know that we reached out to everyone. We're going to move on to some student data. We're going to talk about unique identification codes, or UICs, and a little bit about how that kind of ties into the broader organizational mission of SEPI. So when SEPI was first established, really the foundational goal is for SEPI to create a data collection infrastructure that can connect students coming into Michigan educational institutions like, early childhood centers, PK centers, or maybe students coming into our educational system later in life. The purpose is that we can, through the whole duration that student is learning in Michigan, that we can connect those educational outcomes longitudinally. So that way we can see kind of how different demographics, how different types of students are kind of progressing from point A to point B. And how we do that is through assigning each student in the state a unique identification code. So Michigan is actually really unique in having unique identification codes. Typically in other states, state agencies that collect these different levels of student data don't have identifiers that connect to one another. There has to be information and kind of troving through each system to even get those systems to talk to one another to get that longitudinal data. SEPI has students in Michigan assigned a UIC from the first point of entry all the way until they, graduate at their highest level, whether that be high school or after college. So with creating this longitudinal data system that tracks student performance over time, that really gives the state the advantage and also institutions the advantage of seeing how students progress at each level of their education. Maybe if students are moving from school to school, we can still keep track of that performance to see how each institution has kind of contributed to the success for each student. And it makes it possible for educational agencies to also share data with other state agencies that maybe don't directly kind of have a stake in student data. So the Department of Health and Human Services uses our UIC system, the Department of Corrections uses our UIC system, and post-secondary institutions were able to connect that data from when a student graduates and enters into each institution. So with having that connection of the UIC between all of these different data points, it's really able to tie all of the success metrics that we collect in the STARR to students as they, maybe transfer between institutions, maybe leave higher ed for a little bit and then come back. There's never those gaps as long as these UICs are reported correctly. Do you want to talk about any of these data points here, Rachel, and how these kind of tie together with UICs? I know that we do leverage National Student Clearinghouse to kind of compare the data that we get in STARR.
Right. So SEPI submits personal core information to NSC based on all of the UICs that we've collected in STARR ever, as well as like the last 7 or 8 years of high school graduation cohort UICs. So we submit all of those to NSC to see if we get any possible matches of data that we haven't already collected in STARR. So if the student was in Michigan and then they left the state to go to a college out of state, or if they are attending an independent institution that doesn't submit to STARR, then we would get possibly or more than likely get that information from the NSC record. Now, NSC doesn't give us nearly as much information as what STARR does, but we still get some of that basic information that we're able to add on to the student's longitudinal record that we save and then are able to use for reporting purposes.
Yeah, and just for clarification as well, just because we are comparing our data to NSC data, you'll never get a UIC returned from NSC. So if your institution does reference NSC data, you're never going to get a UIC from NSC. That only comes from SEPI, and SEPI maintains that UIC system. So SEPI created a collection specifically for institutions of higher education for getting UICs. We worked with an adult learner work group to make sure that all of the needs of higher ed institutions were being captured in this collection for returning UICs. So because CEPI also works with the Parchment e-transcript service to share UICs and transcripts between high school students and colleges and universities, we do have, resources beyond just the request for UIC collection for getting UICs. So if your institution participates in the e-transcript service, you will see those UICs on those transcripts. But for any students in which you can't get those UICs from that service, maybe they come from out of state, maybe they come from private schools, or other reasons where they wouldn't be captured on an e-transcript, you would use the IHE request for UIC collection to get new UICs for those students. And a little note about who gets UICs throughout Michigan's educational system. So any institution that receives public funds for educational purposes, the students that receive services from those entities do get UICs. So on the flip side of that, if you have a student coming to your institution who's from a non-public school, those students probably won't have UICs unless that student was participating in the free and reduced lunch program. So there is the possibility of students who have gone through Michigan's education system who never have UICs. Those are going to be your private school students. So a couple of home truths, if you will, about UICs. Some things to remember as you're working in this collection. First and foremost is that identity management is not perfect. So humans are prone to error when entering in data. Maybe a student has reported his or her name or his or her gender differently over time. And humans can only do so much to know, about the demographics of each student that attends your institutions. Luckily, we have rules built into the IHE request for UIC collection that can help guide you to maybe find potential matches for students that come into your institution. But kind of on the forefront is that the system is never going to be perfect. So in addition to that, with the system being imperfect, there's also the tendency for human error with resolving student demographics as well. So maybe you at your community college has been working with CEPI ever since we started collecting STARR data. You have a lot of experience, but maybe you find that there's demographic information from other institutions where it kind of has you scratching your head, or maybe you see student information submitted that might match your students, but something just seems a little off. There is the tendency for, people who are new to CEPI data systems, they don't necessarily understand the ins and outs, and mistakes can happen. So just because, you may be an expert in working with STARR and UIC data, there are definitely new people coming into the CEPI data submission world every single year. And with both of those kind of in tandem, the UIC system can only handle so much uncertainty. So if there's names that are being misspelled incorrectly that are going into CEPI's UIC system from other institutions, if there's maybe some fat fingering of birth dates going on in local student data systems and that gets submitted into CEPI's UIC system, the system can only handle so much uncertainty. So with the combination of human error and maybe new people that are maybe unfamiliar with how to work with CEPI data systems, the UIC system is in itself imperfect and also prone to error. So just some things to keep in mind. But with all that being said, we do have a really great system for finding potential matches out there. Maybe one of the more frustrating things about working in the UIC system is the need to work through resolutions. So getting those students, you see these potential matches, you see birth dates that are off, you see names that are maybe close to how your student spells his or her name. Maybe you see a gender submitted for the student where, that's not in your own local system. We have rules built into our UIC service that tries to kind of encompass all of these areas where errors can happen, where names can vary, so on and so forth. And one special rule that we have built into the IHE request for UIC collection is, so last name changes. We realize that there's a lot of women who graduate from high school, and by the time that they get into an institution of higher education, their last name is different because they've gotten married. Our UIC system is able to accommodate those types of changes just because it is unique for colleges and universities. So some of the rules that go into our matching service, the system can actually swap around last name, first name, middle names to see if there's any potential matches out there, just because field entry can sometimes be prone to error, and also the way that maybe a student fills out his or her name on a form for your institution compared to another institution might be different. The service can actually handle those types of uncertainties. And believe it or not, the system can actually sound out names to see if there's any names that sound similar out there. That's a really cool function of our UIC service. But like I said, there is the tendency for human error, so the matching service cannot kind of make up for all the potential discrepancies that might go into someone's student demographic submission. So the UIC collection is the only CEPI collection for higher ed that is ongoing. So one of the advantages of this service is that you can request student UICs anytime during the year as long as the Michigan Student Data System is not down for maintenance. Every single year we do clear that collection though. So after the STARR has been submitted, we do clear the data staging area for the request for UIC collection just so that you can have kind of a clean slate for submitting new student demographics for the next reporting cycle. And there's only 4 fields that are required for the collection. So first name, last name, date of birth, and gender. And just a little note about name changes. So with submitting student data and potentially having it match to another student where, you know, those names maybe represent a name change, in order to kind of update that student's name, you do, of course, need to have record that that name change happened. So I know that institutions don't collect birth certificates, but just having that form to verify that you got when that student entered your institution. If you do have students within your system where maybe the gender is not reported as either male or female, maybe you don't have any gender submitted for that student. Luckily, if you do submit students with either male or female, the system is able to find potential matches despite the gender that's submitted. So I know that there are some institutions that struggle with reporting students that don't fit into kind of that gender binary, so male, female, maybe they just don't report a gender. The service is able to, despite which gender you put on for that student, is able to handle those student records. And I know that that is something that was expressed to Rachel and I at the training that we had done previously with community colleges about how, it's hard to, force students into one of 2 buckets. Unfortunately, at the federal level, they only have those 2 buckets, male or female. So we have to work with that, but at the same time, our UIC service is able to accommodate students in your local systems that maybe don't fit into either of those buckets. So here's a little flow chart. Some of the points on here might be a little outdated. I don't know if DocuFind is still something that is used in the STARR submission, but kind of the general flow of how the service works is true. So students coming from Michigan public high schools, they'll have or potentially have e-transcripts, which includes the UIC. But for students that come from out of state, come from non-public schools, they do need UICs. That's what that request for UIC collection is for. It can also be really useful for validating all UICs in your own system. So from collection to collection, there is that potential for a student's UIC to change. The reason why that happens is because maybe that student also attends another institution, maybe has received other services that would require their record to get updated, or maybe potentially have another UIC submitted for that same student. In the process of all that happening, student records can get linked, the primary UIC can change, and by the time you get to your STARR collection, if you haven't validated your student's UICs, you might get thrown an error. So there's kind of that twofold mission for the request for UIC collection. It's to obtain UICs and also to validate them, and you can do that year-round. Like I said, there's only 4 required fields within the request for UIC collection. If you are submitting bulk uploads via an extract from your student information system, or if you have the schema mapped to an Excel document, I did include the schema fields here just to kind of give you an idea about what goes into those fields. So the submitting entity code, school facility number, those are both your 5-digit entity code from the educational entity master. Your student ID number, that could be your institutional identifier, so that could be whatever local ID number is used in your own system. There are these optional fields as well, of course. You can submit a UIC in the request for UIC collection to validate that that is the active UIC being used and it's the primary UIC used for that student. You can also submit middle names. Submitting these optional fields might cut down on the number of resolutions that you get. Student suffix, if that's something that's housed in your local student information system. And this multiple birth order field, the purpose for that is, say for instance, you have a Amaya and a Mia Jones attending your institution. They both have the same birth date. The system, if you submit a request for new UICs, the system's going to think that's the same person because it can sound out the name and it sees all those other core information being the same. Say that after multiple collections, you get tired of submitting these 2 students to the request for UIC collection because it always wants to resolve them as being the same student. You can submit these students using the multiple birth order fields. So you can put a 1 or 2, you can have any digit up to 9, to represent students that are twins, triplets, quadruplets, so on and so forth, to make sure that the system knows that those 2 students are different. And that's something that's going to come with multiple submissions, but there is a tool that you can use if you do find that issue occurring. I did list the accepted values for the fields in this collection. So for the name fields, you can have your A through Z, you can have apostrophes, you can have commas, you can have hyphens, you can have periods. The system is kind of finicky with spaces. I would not advise spaces being used just because it can kind of onesie-twosie with some names that are submitted with spaces. And, say that you have a student with 2 last names. It's better to submit that using a hyphen. Say that you have a student who has a special character typically submitted with their name. So maybe a Jose has a, I always mess up this, but I'm going to call it a flying apostrophe. The accent mark over top the E, the system's not going to accept that special character. What I advise is, if you do want to submit Jose as having that accent mark over the E, you would just use a apostrophe instead. So I know it's not perfect, but we did say that the UIC system is imperfect, so it can only accept so much. So why is validating UIC so important? Like I said, student records might get linked in between the time that you last submitted your STARR collection. Other institutions may have updated records and you kind of need to bring it back to what is reported in your own student information system. And the purpose for validating UICs and why it's so important really gets down to less work when you get to your STARR submission. So if you can have all of your UICs sorted out, you can have all of those new UICs collected, you can have all those resolutions done. By the time that you get to your STARR collection, you're probably not going to have much identity management to do at that point. And because there's so many other data fields that require so much more attention, me and Rachel think that it's a best practice to kind of get those UICs resolved before you start working with your STARR, because that's one less thing that you have to worry about when you're working through your STARR. So this is what that data staging area for the IHE request for UIC collection looks like. You're going to want to make sure that you're selecting the IHE request for UIC collection and not the request for UIC collection. I know that that's a little confusing. It'd be better if we called it the K-12 request for UIC collection, but I'm not the one making that call. So you're going to want to make sure that you get that IHE request for UIC collection. You pull up your institution and you can view the data staging area. A little bit about some of the options that you have here. You can click upload to submit your schema files to this collection. You can download the students that you currently have in that collection that is formatted into a XML upload. So maybe you wanted to archive the students that you have collected or have submitted for next year. You can do that into an XML file, which can then be opened up in Excel. You can clear all the students out by clicking delete. But if you click IHE request for UIC collection, you're going to open up the data staging area. There's a lot of useful reports on here that are also available on the STARR data staging area. You'll be able to see all the demographics that you submitted below. You can click that filter button, which is in the middle right-hand side there, and you can search for students using UIC or demographic information. I'm going to take you over to the left side now, that UIC resolution status. You can click on any of those that have a link to view those specific statuses. So maybe you only want to view those that require resolution, and you want to export that as an Excel file. Any of the students that are displayed below can be exported in CSV or Excel format. At the very bottom right hand there, you see that export functionality there. So that's useful if you want to kind of take that information offline and kind of work with it with other staff in your office if need be. Some of the more useful reports that I find really help, there aren't that many errors and warnings in the IHE request for UIC collection, but there are some. The validation detail report, if you want to view any errors or warnings that were submitted in this collection, you can open this up in Excel and use the filter functionality in Excel if you kind of want to view specific errors or warnings to kind of resolve those one by one. That way you can edit your upload file to have no errors or warnings. And those are going to be found, these reports I'm going to speak to, from the data staging area page. So that validation report is going to be there at the top. UIC resolution status reports, that's going to be the next one that I'm going to talk about here. So one of the options for those resolution reports is the list of changed UICs. So maybe you uploaded UICs to validate and you want to know which ones you need to change in your local student information system. This report's going to tell you. And it's going to list all of that demographic data and also the local ID number that you submitted. So that way you can match those UICs right back into your system. You can also export these reports that I'm talking about in Excel, CSV, or PDF. I don't find PDF very useful, but I don't know if you want to share how many students you uploaded with your office staff and you want it to look good in a report, you have PDF. So there you go. UIC resolution detail report, that's one that's going to give you kind of that full synopsis of the upload that you put into the collection, the different statuses. So if you kind of want to work offline with some of the students that require resolution, but you can also use this report to kind of put information back into your student information system if need be. I find this report really useful when I'm working through research requests just because it gives kind of a full synopsis of what's going on in that data staging area. If you're new to submitting requests for UIC information to CEPI, there's three options. You can do a onesie-twosie and you can submit all of your students individually. From that data staging area page, you can click Add Direct. That's going to be on that pane of buttons there kind of in the middle. You can do a search and add. Search and add, you're going to put in your student demographic info and it's going to show you potential matches. Add Direct is just going to plop that student right into your student information system, and it's going to require resolution if that student's information matches another's. That search ad is going to kind of bypass that resolution process. Sorry to jump on you here, but The option 2 is to export directly from your student information system. This does take kind of IT bandwidth, and I know that as Rachel and I have been working with independent colleges, so even for smaller community colleges, we really understand that institutions don't necessarily have the bandwidth all the time to kind of match exports to our schema. But if you do have that bandwidth at your institution, that's great, because that really makes it easy for uploading. You can also map the schema, the IHE request for UIC collection schema, to an Excel document, which can then be exported as an XML upload. And that's really been a useful tool for independent colleges, and we think that it's a really great tool for all higher ed. If you're kind of submitting kind of less than 5,000 students at one time, that can be a really great way to kind of manage your student demographics for an upload in Excel. So if you did want to do that, first what you would do is you would kind of put all that request for UIC information into an Excel spreadsheet and clean it up. You're going to want to get rid of special characters. You're going to want to make sure that there's no hidden spaces. Sometimes student information systems export null values as spaces. Like I said, any student data submission is going to be kind of finicky with spaces. You also have to make sure that the enumerations for each field is what's going to be accepted. So it's got to be MRF if you're submitting gender. You're going to want to have to format date of birth in a certain way. It's going to be, you know, year, month, and then day. Mapping a schema file, this is how you would do it. If anyone wants me to send you a pre-mapped Excel document, you don't have to do all of this quirky mapping yourself. I'm more than willing to do that. Feel free to reach out to me and I'll send that over to you if this would be a good resource for you.
There's a question real quick that Trevor might be able to answer. Someone is asking, do we have any plans to support characters and the names in the future?
I don't think that that would be something that we would want to do, just because we do have our UIC system talking to so many different agencies, and at some point we're going to be partnering with other agencies that have their own identity management systems. And just to maintain uniformity, I think that that would not be something that we would want to incorporate. But I mean, I definitely understand the need, just because there are, you know, student names that have special characters that are not just exclusively an accent mark. So I'm going to butcher this, but in German, there's those vowels with the 2 dots over it. I'm not even going to try to say what the name of that is, but special characters like that, you can't supplement with, you know, kind of quick fixes. I definitely do understand the need for that, but I don't think that that would be something that would be a possibility as we integrate with more systems, but something to consider definitely. So getting back to building this XML file in Excel, you're going to want to make sure that all of those fields are in there, especially those schema files. You export it from the developer tab in Excel. You can also save the Excel doc as a .xml document. That will also save it as an XML. Only XML files can be uploaded to the MSDS. We agree that XML is a pain in the butt, but that's just the file format that CEPI accepts student data in. It'd be great if you could just upload an Excel doc or other formats, but for now, that's the functionality that we have. So from the MSDS, you would upload that file into the IHE request for UIC collection, and that would get shot right to your student or to your data staging area if it was successful. If not, if you're impatient like I am, you can watch it get uploaded. So you would go to, underneath that upload file, there's uploaded file status. This is also true for the STARR collection. You can watch the upload status, and you have to keep reloading the page. So however you do that, I right mouse click and click reload. That's how it goes in Chrome, but you wait for it to either fail or process successfully. If it does fail, you can click on the file name. So in my example here, your file.xml, you click on that if the file failed to open up and see how the system rejected it. So in this specific example, there was that special character for that one name. It's also going to tell you if there's duplicate students in your upload file. The system doesn't accept duplicate students. But there's also formatting errors. Those formatting errors can be kind of a pain to work through. If you ever are uploading a file where it's telling you that an optional field is formatted incorrectly, you can submit that file without that optional field. Granted, that middle name is going to really help you out with the number of resolutions that you get. But you can get rid of optional fields if you just can't get it to format right, and the system will still accept the file. So now that we have talked about how to get students into the MSDS, it'd be great in a perfect world, you upload students, they either match or get a new UIC, but unfortunately that's not how it works. There is the need to resolve students as well. So when I say resolve UICs, that means that you uploaded a student and the system found a match that was within a close enough percentage that it wants a human to resolve it rather than the computer system. Resolutions can be kind of annoying because you see students that match, you know it's not your student, it's like, you know, why is the system having me do this to, you know, 200 or 300 students? This is really awful. But there is a purpose for our madness, and the reason why we have manual resolutions is to ensure that the integrity of our data is as high as it can be. So when you're matching students, some things to keep in mind is that you're really benefiting high schools. And the way that you're benefiting high schools is because if we can keep that continuity of a student record from when they first started in Michigan's educational system into your institution, high schools are really getting a great picture about how their students are performing. So at the local level, they're able to get on My School Data and see post-secondary enrollment, where their students are enrolling, how long it takes them. Rachel knows the specific names of these reports, and I think that she's going to get to those later. But these are all reports that can be leveraged in My School Data for high schools. High schools can also see remedial coursework that was needed for their students, so areas that they need to improve in their own school. They're able to see if their students are even continuing and finishing, so through completing the first 24 credits, that's another report in My School Data. And they're also able to see if the students, which they're investing so much time, so many tears over, if they're graduating from college and how long it takes them. That's really such a benefit at the local level for high schools to get all of that information. And the way that that information is preserved is by making sure that students are matched correctly. And those matches are also benefiting you guys as well. So making sure that there's that continuity of records in between institutions, so capturing student transfers, making sure that those UICs still carry over. That also helps with the calculation of success rates, but also making sure that the e-transcript service is, you know, being used with students coming into your institution that get a UIC. That's great. You still need to account for those students that, you know, aren't coming in with that e-transcript service to make sure that that continuity of, you know, student progress is still being captured. So how does resolution work? People in the field just might say it exists to annoy me, but what happens is you submit students, like I said, system finds a match within a certain percentage. We have those calculated because we think that a human needs to be determining whether these two records match or not. So you have to make a choice when you're resolving UICs. Either you request a new UIC or you update the student record that the student matched to. All of the UICs that you either request from resolutions or are uploaded and automatically get a new UIC generated, those can, you know, be listed in the list of new UICs report. That's one of those UIC resolution detail reports. But at the baseline, resolutions, you have to, when you request a new UIC through resolution, you have to tell me, because I'm the one UIC state admin, you have to tell me why you needed a new UIC and why the students that are, presented as being a potential match, why they're not the same. So with submitting requests for new UICs from resolutions, there are some things to keep in mind. With me processing all of these UIC requests from K-12, from higher ed institutions on my own, I kind of see the data points that can sometimes fall through the cracks when determining whether students are the same. Of course, there's the common thing to say of, these students are different because they have a different name. These students are clearly different because they have a different date of birth. I don't know whether these students are the same because it has no history. When I click on the UIC for the match, it comes up with nothing. Or the high school or the district that's listed for the student as having graduated from or not graduated from does not match my records. Those are probably the most common reasons for requesting new UICs. I want to talk through some of those more common, I need a new UIC situations. One of those is the record that you guys have does not match the high school that I have for the student graduating from. That's something that the MSDS maintains. If it's a Michigan high school student, we share that record with you of, hey, this is the school district that the student was last reported from. Here we have the date that they were first enrolled. We have something called a district exit status. And we can clearly see that back when Nathan Cooper attended K-12, that he went by Nathaniel. So that's another data point to kind of sort through. We can see that they match in all these other areas. But there's something that I want to draw attention to down here at the bottom, that district exit code, district exit status. That's something that may kind of seem like a small field kind of hidden down there, but it's going to give you a lot of useful information. So say, for instance, the person that submitted this resolution requesting a new UIC, hey, it's fine that Nathan was called Nathaniel back in high school, or middle school rather. But this is not the school district that I have the student graduating from. A district exit status of 8 actually means that the student enrolled in another district and they fell off of CEPI data reporting. So I'm not saying that by talking through these kind of common troubleshooting UIC issues that this information that I'm presenting will make it easier. I think that more information is better than less, so that way when you're making those decisions about resolving UICs, you feel equipped to kind of handle all the information that CEPI hands back to you. District exit status is a really important one to keep in mind. So students that graduated from a district, they'll have one of the following district exit status codes. If you want to know specifically what these district exit status codes are, you can go to the MSDS collection details manual from the CEPI homepage. You would click CEPI applications, Michigan Student Data System, and under, I think it's manuals, on that main page there, you're going to find the collection details manual. You can select either the 1718 or 1819 collection manual. It's all going to be the same for this field. And you would find the table that has these district exit status codes. When students did not graduate from a district, they'll have one of the following district exit status codes. I'm kind of getting tired of saying that. It's a mouthful. Say that you have a student that comes from out of state. They maybe graduated from Colorado. Say that CEPI hands you back a record from, I don't know, 2009, where the district exit status code was 9, and the last district that they were reported in was Caledonia. Hey, that's more information than you had before. It might be your student, but with not having kind of that basic touch point of, hey, this is the district that the student graduated from, might confuse him more to know that there's someone that matches, or it might be more information to equip you with making a better decision.
One thing I want to say about this is, first of all, I so much appreciate Trevor and the training that he does for our UIC and EEM stuff, because we haven't had anybody in the past that's really been able to do this for us on the post-secondary side. But by him even bringing up these K-12 exit status codes was something that I hadn't even thought of in trying to help out with the UIC resolution in the past. And a lot of people that have heard this already have been like super interested, like, oh, you know, where can I find that at? But, you know, once we post this online, you'll be able to take these codes and, you know, save them if you're the UIC person. But I think it's really good information to have in your back pocket when you're going through that process. So I just want to thank Trevor for that right now, and I'll probably give him a lot of praise in a little bit anyways, but.
Oh, thanks, Rachel.
Yes.
So another common UIC situation is maybe you have Eddie Peeps at your institution. He's got a birth date of 1/28/1991 in your own system. And hey, we have Edward Coolio Peeps. He was submitted by a K-12 entity. But hey, that birth date's different, so that can't really be mine. You might pull up the UIC information and see that, yep, there's no supporting background information, so I'm just going to request a new UIC because I don't really have enough information to support that. We include what's called a resolver list on the resolution page. So right above where I cut off that screenshot, you can either download what's called the resolver list in Excel or PDF format, and it's going to give you the list of all UIC users throughout the state. So early childhood, K-12, higher ed, and you'll be able to find out where Peter Griffin was a UIC resolver. So if you wanted to reach out, find out if Eddie Peeps, maybe Edward Coolio Peeps, that's more information to give you an informed decision. So something to consider. But you might also find a student where the date of birth is different, and you can open up the UIC and see that there's that collection details. Institutions can't really get into more than just seeing the core information that was submitted by each institution or each K-12 entity, but you know, it's more information to make informed decisions. Maybe you'll see that different school districts have been submitting different birth dates. Maybe one of those birth dates matches the one that you have in your own system, which will help you make a more informed decision. So more information to have in your back pocket. If you're new to working with UICs, you might not know how to link UICs or split UICs. Seeing how Rachel praised me, now I got to push it back out to the field. I have a lot of respect for institutions that go in and take the time to link student records because, I mean, you really don't have to in order to do your submission, but it so much helps the integrity of our data because to make sure that we have that continuity of student reporting is so important to the mission of CEPI and making sure that all stakeholders get the most accurate information. So, I mean, even though I might open up my linking queue and see that I have 100 requests from one institution, while I may roll my eyes and think it's going to take a long time to do, I mean, I have a lot of respect for institutions that take the time to do that. So applause and kudos to you if you are one of those people that takes the time to do that, because you're really helping to improve CEPI's data and making sure that as a state, we're reporting on student outcomes in a way that gives a really complete picture. So thank you. But to make those links, say that you find these two students, how do you link them? So I list out the steps here. I'm just kind of going to give you at the screenshot level about how that goes. You can reference this slide from your office if you need to. You will go to the student details page. So you can search for a student from student search, or you can open up their details from the resolution page, and that will open up the student history page. From that action dropdown, you can request to link. You click go. You would click all the UICs, or you would input all of the UICs that need to be linked. So maybe you'll find that there's 3 different UICs out there for the same student. Just think of it as doing 3 good deeds for the day. You can pat yourself on the back, but before you send the request, you have to pick the primary. A primary UIC, like I had said earlier, why it's so important to validate UICs, is going to be the only one that the UIC that the UIC system matches to. So there could be a UIC for the same student where the student has 3 different names in each student demographics for each UIC. The system's only going to match to that primary UIC. And because you are the one doing the linking, you can selfishly, well, not selfishly, because it's a reward for being good, you can use the UIC that's reported in your own information system, and you can force everyone else in the state to use that same UIC if they want to report that student. You'd click the radio button for selecting that primary UIC. You'd put in a justification. Yet again, it's just me going through this queue, so you can tell me kind words. You can tell me that I did all this research, or you can just say, please link these students, they're the same. Whatever kind of justification you think I need to know about why you're linking these students, compliments always help. I'll process those requests and get those UICs linked. The MSDS is actually built now to send out an email when UICs are linked, which will confirm which is now the primary for that student. You can also split UICs. This isn't necessarily as common in the higher ed world, just because you can't pull up a UIC from that same process that I showed you. The student history is not going to list STARR uploads, so you're not necessarily going to know. But say that you do find a student in which UICs need to be split, you would send that information over to CEPI customer support. If you're emailing, you would only send UICs. Please do not send student demographic information via email. You can do that over the phone, though, and they'll pass that information off to me. I'll split those UICs just because that is an administrative function only. And I believe at this point, we can take any questions that have been submitted. Any updates there?
No. No questions through here unless you want to submit some real quick.
We can roll right into Rachel's part here. You can listen to someone else's voice.
All right, so let's get started with STARR.
Why do you make it black?
Oops, what did I do?
Can you go back? Oh, there we go.
All right. So every year we try to, well, the student transcript and academic record repository collection. So this collection is our student level information that we've been collecting since 2009. So we're on a good path of collecting this data from the public universities and community colleges. We've also had a few independent colleges that have submitted over the past few years, and with the inclusion of the Section 256 TIP and Pell reporting requirements, the independent institutions are now going to be reporting to STARR when they have students who are receiving those type of funds at their institutions as well. So with that, the data that we need to collect within STARR relate to the students. So we have their personal core information that we get from the UIC collection. We have certain demographic information like their entry dates, race, ethnicity, and other data elements that we will be using in future reports like the CTE, so the career and technical education, post-secondary information. So if a student has been in any of those programs with a lot of different variations, we'll be collecting that. We collect their award data. So any degrees, certificates, awards that they receive, we'll be collecting those. At the session level, we have a lot of different information that we collect regarding something that's new this year that I'll go over, special populations for Perkins reporting, the Pell Grant to help with that Section 256 reporting requirement. We also look at the session start and end dates as well as all of the variations within the session, so the names and we'll be looking at degree or certificate seeking at the session level for students, as well as high school student information. We also collect information about the programs that the students are enrolled in and all of the courses that the students are enrolled in at the session level. Now this has recently, our IHE webpage has recently been updated, like within the last couple of days, and we haven't updated it here yet. But if I can get out, I'm going to show you what it looks like real quick. So now on the CEPI webpage, it used to be the IHE website. Now, if you look up at the top, it's called CEPI Post-Secondary Applications. If you click on that, you'll see that we have the IHE Request for UIC collection and the STARR collection here. By the end of this week, we're going to be adding our new data collection for community colleges, which is the Michigan Post-Secondary Data Inventory, or the MIPD, and that will be added into this as well. So when you first land on the CEPI Post-Secondary Applications page, it's going to tell you about how to get your security for the different applications. So you have the EEM, MSDS that houses the IHE Request for UIC and STARR collections. And then there's a little blurb in here about the Section 209 and 245 reporting requirement that we collect through that spreadsheet, if you're familiar with that in the past. At the bottom, we have like manuals for the My Login. There's probably not the XML validation guide and some things in here about how to gain access to the applications as well. Now, if we go back up, I just want to show you the IHE Request for UIC collection has the security agreement information in there. Trevor has his different documentations for how to do the bulk upload and the user guide for the UIC collection. And then the schemas and stuff like that are posted on here as well. For STARR, right now we have the data manual and user guide available. And then you can also see under the technical material, you have the CSV to XML conversion tool. If you use that for the STARR upload, we have our business rules related to STARR, and then the STARR data field layout. It's basically the schema in a spreadsheet format. To me, it's easier to see how the components are laid out better with the enumerations. And to me, it's an easier way to look at the schema rather than actually pulling up the schema to look at it. So this is the new way that the website's going to be looking for you. I think it's going to be laid out a lot better now that we have more applications that are coming into CEPI that we're collecting data for. So I hope that you find it useful. Back to the presentation. So the new or updated data elements that we have for the 17-18 collection, I know I hear a lot that the institutions feel like the STARR changes so much every year, and it has, but I think that we can probably agree that it's making the data more reliable, a lot cleaner, and is helping us to be able to produce more meaningful reports on the My School Data website as well. This year, due to changes that happened through legislation, we were tasked with taking over some of the data collections that were happening over at the Workforce Development Agency for community colleges. And CEPI has taken over some of those data collections. So one of them was an awards conferred report where we needed to add special populations into our student level data collection. So special populations was added this year. It's a conditional required field. So if you have students or if you receive any type of Perkins funding based on students receiving or falling into one of those special population areas, you are required to report that information for the student in the STARR. I know that there's like some universities that don't have Perkins funding, but there might be a few that do. Most community colleges, I'm sure, receive that funding. So if we see that you're not submitting anything for special populations, we'll be sending out data quality email alerts about that, and we'll expect you to be doing that this year. With the we added the Pell Grant data element. If you remember, in the past, we used to call it economically disadvantaged, or now I forget what it's called. It might be on one of my slides, but it wasn't collecting the data at the granular level that we needed for the Pell Grant information. So we removed that old field, and this new field is Pell Grant, and that's going to allow CEPI to be able to produce the reports on your behalf so that you don't have to send it separately to Department of Treasury. And we also had a few changes to help out with being able to produce our reports. So we used to have what was called the student level code. Student level code, we collected what the student's intent was at the session level for that they were going for ultimately their award. So are they enrolled for an associate's degree? Were they enrolled to go towards a bachelor's degree? We also tried to catch in that one data element whether they were a degree seeking or non-degree seeking student, and whether they were undergraduate or graduate. So we removed that because it was making it difficult to be able to figure out all those three things with one data element. And so instead we have enrollment and post-secondary award level, and that is where we're catching what the student's intent is for their degree. And we added a code 0 that is helping us to be able to see which ones are for those professional or technical credentials. We also added that same code to the academic award level so that we can identify those awards that are specifically related to the professional or technical credentials as well. Last year we added the degree or certificate seeking data element, and we only had it as yes or no. We added the community college seeking transfer to 4-year only enumeration to the degree seeking, and this is one of the enumerations that we need when we're looking at the populations for the post-secondary success rates report. So when we need that in order to know if they should be included in the cohorts or not when we're looking at successes. But what's really important moving forward this year, since we're not looking at the student level code anymore for degree or non-degree seeking students, it's important that this degree or certificate seeking data element is filled out properly for each student at the session level so that we can make sure that they're appropriately being put into the correct buckets for reporting purposes. So some of the things that we changed or deleted for this year, so CTE used to be CTE concentrator. That went away. Now it's just CTE, and we added more enumerations to be able to reflect exactly what that student's position was at the session level. And this is conditionally required as well. So if your institution receives Perkins funding, you must report CTE. You'll get a DQ, a data quality email about it if we're not seeing students being submitted with that. So it's something that you need to make sure that you're capturing to be able to be included in the STARR collection this year. Student level code, like I said, we got rid of that. We do have student level, and this is where we're capturing whether or not the student is an undergraduate or a graduate student at the session level. So how we broke out the 3 data points from the student level code. We now have the degree or certificate seeking student, where we captured degree or non-degree seeking. We have student level, where we capture undergraduate or graduate. And then we have enrollment and post-secondary award level, where we're capturing the intent of the student at the session level. The economically disadvantaged, like I said, that was removed and replaced with the Pell Grant. Do we have any questions coming in about changes to STAR? All right, so I'm going to go into like submitting the records in STAR. A lot of this, I think Trevor went through a lot of the functionality of MSDS. So because STAR and the UIC collection are both in the MSDS, they look a lot alike. Some of the functionality is different, but pretty much it's kind of the same. In order for you to be able to submit your records in STAR, you have to be able to create an XML file for upload. We do not have online entry available in STAR. It's something that we've talked about trying to do, but it might be a lot of work to be able to do that. So it's something we haven't actually pursued yet. Let me see something real quick. I think it's at the end. So we have that CSV to XML conversion tool. Actually, let me go to it. That's available on the website to help create your records. And this was a tool that Lake Michigan College had created for us way back when. Jim Brower, who created the tool, is retiring soon, so SEPI took over the tool last year, and we have it available for you to use still. It took a lot to figure it out and understand how it works, but at the end of this STAR presentation, there's some quick tips that you can use while you're creating those flat files. One thing that I learned, so if you are submitting the special populations data element, hold on a second, let me get my right slide. So with the special populations, it's a multi-select field, meaning that, of course, your student could be more than one, fall into one of more of the enumerations for special populations. And if you have that, when you're putting those data elements in the tool, you would be putting a semicolon in between each enumeration in the same line. Something that we haven't documented yet, but we're going to be documenting that in the user guide, and probably within the next week or so, we'll be updating those documents on the webpage so that it has the most up-to-date information on there. So back to uploading the STAR. So when you're go into this MSDS in the STAR collection, you're going to go to that left-hand navigation tool and click to upload your file. You choose the STAR 2017-18 collection and find where your file has been saved in your drive, and you can click to upload your file there. In order to keep track of what's going on with your file as it's uploading, you go to the file upload status, and here it's going to tell you each step of the way what's going on. So in the status column, you'll see whether or not your file processed successfully or if it failed. If it failed, you can go to the file name and click on that to see what exactly happened to it. And it'll show you what your validation error is at the bottom. So specifically, it tells you what line it is in and what the problem was. And this is saying that the submitting entity code in the file wasn't correct for the person who actually uploaded the file. So you'd have to make sure that that 5-digit entity code that you get from the EEM is correct for your institution based on the person who's logged in to submit the file. And then to view the data that you uploaded, you're going to go back to the data staging area. And again, you choose the STAR 2017-18 collection. And you click on the collection link to be able to open it up to go to the STAR staging detail screen. And as you see, if you're not already familiar, these staging areas look pretty much the same from the IAT request for UIC collection to the STARR collection, which is nice, so you're familiar with what you're doing in both. You're able to see for the STARR what your validation status is. Here we see that there's errors that exist. There's 3. And the UIC resolution is 0, which is good. There's reports, just like what you have in the UIC collection, that you can look at for your STARR. And then at the bottom, all your student records will be listed. So in the STARR staging details screen, you can search for students using the filter button in the middle there. Or you can search for students alphabetically. So to be able to, when you use the filter button, you'll be able to either put in the UIC or the student's last name or first name, and you click filter, and then you'll be able to pull up those results. When you want to view the student list, so all the students that you uploaded in the collection, you can click on the last name to review one student in particular, to look and see what their what data was submitted for them. If they have an error or whatever, you can go in and find exactly where the error is located. If the students require resolution, you would go to the last link there on the student line to click on that to be able to go to resolve the record. So in order to review the submitted data for the student, you'd click on their last name. If for whatever reason they have any errors or warnings on their record, at the bottom of the screen, it'll show that they have an error. When you click on the error drop-down menu, you'll see all the way to the right that there's an error link that will take you directly to the error within that student record. But the error message tells you that it's in the academic session component, what characteristic it is, and then the message for the error. And one thing to note is if you have any errors or any UIC resolution that needs to be done, you won't be able to finish your STARR collection and certify. All errors have to be corrected and all UIC resolution has to be corrected. If you have warnings, you can certify with warnings, but we still want you to pay attention to those and look to make sure that the data that you submitted are accurate. So to identify where an error is located in the student record, you click on that error link. Like I said, it takes you right to where it's located. So this one in particular says that it's at the session level, and it was the enrollment and post-secondary award level. It says that if degree or certificate seeking student is yes, then enrollment and post-secondary award level is required. And when you look at the student record up there, you'll see that the degree or certificate seeking status was yes, and nothing was submitted for enrollment and post-secondary award level. So because they're a degree seeking student, we would expect that they would be, their intent at that session would be to either be getting an associate's or a certificate or a bachelor's something. So that's why we're expecting to see that. In order to change anything, you'd have to, because we don't have the online entry, you have to go back into your student system or back to your file upload and make those changes and then upload the file again. I already talked about the UIC resolution, so all UICs must be resolved. And in order to get that, you'd go to that resolution status on the right-hand side and click on it for the student to be able to go and resolve the records. Once you are error-free and no resolution is required, you would go to the, if you look on the STARR staging detail screen at the top right-hand side, there's a certify button. If you click on the certify button, it's going to take you through our quality review process where it checks for any certification validation errors, which is all at this level, it's all related to UIC. So if you have the same student in there twice, you're going to get that error. You'll have to go back and like remove one of them in order to make it so there's no errors at the certification level. Once you get to go through the quality review process, you'll get an email sent to you letting you know that it's finished. So you'll have to go back, and this is what the email looks like. Then you'll have to go back into this certification process to be able to go in and click that you're confirming that the information is valid and certify your data. At the bottom, you'll see that there is a log letting you know what step of the process you're at. So if you did your quality review, found that you had errors, you had to go back and re-upload. And then once you've certified, all those steps will be in there for you to see who did it and at what time. After you've certified, there's a couple different places where you can go to see that you have certified or what status that you're in. At the staging area, so at the very beginning, when you first pull up your collection, you'll see that there's a certification status column, and at the top there it says that they're certified. If you need to go in and make changes, you can do that, and it will tell you that you have decertified in the status. And then you just have to go through the process again if you decertify to complete the collection. So again, this is an old picture, but everything you need to be able to submit the data is on our website. And let me go back up for a minute. If you have any questions or if you see anything on here that might be helpful, I'm always open to hearing those suggestions, and we can do what we can to get everything updated. So before
we move on, we did get a question about data quality. So this one says, please make it very clear that the second set of data quality checks are done after the submission deadline.
So we have, for the STARR collection, we have 3 sets of data quality that go out. We have one that's for the pre-collection. It actually happens like the first week of August, where we're looking at things that happened last year that might not have been corrected, or they're just anomalies that we noticed from data submitted last year that we're going to remind you about this year. We have a mid-collection DQ that goes out, I think it's the last week of September. And basically that's looking at a lot of different data quality checks that we look at to make sure that the data are submitted accurately. And we encourage the colleges and the universities to try to get all their data in by that snapshot, and we'll be sending out an email communication letting you know exactly when that is. That should be going out probably in a couple weeks. But that way you can make sure that you have all of those things checked before we get close to closing the STARR collection, because then you'll have time to make those changes if needed. We have the post-collection DQ that goes out the day after the collection closes. And at that point, if you receive anything, you may have an opportunity to request to have the STARR collection reopened for you, but it's a process that requires your president's signature and everything like that. It's not something that we encourage doing because we'd rather you look at those checks mid-collection. But if something were really wrong with the data that were submitted, then that's something that we can look at reopening the collection for to have corrections made.
And I know that having worked in other CEPI collections, the purpose of data quality messages is really just to alert you to the potential of anomalies, even though we point out anomalies in these data quality reports. It does not necessarily mean that anything's wrong. We just, for each data quality message, we give you, the ramifications for, say that this information is wrong, this is what this might look like, because how we look at data collections is we kind of view them as like the story being told about your institution. And if we think that, there is an anomaly from how we would expect an institution to report, that's what these data quality checks are for. We do realize that there are specific circumstances at each institution and each entity that submits data to us that, maybe the anomaly points to data that is not wrong. But I think that getting the point across that with each iteration of data quality reports, the pre-collection is really just to kind of forewarn you of, hey, this looks kind of funny from your last collection. You might want to look at it. The mid-collection is really the opportunity to go in and make those fixes based off of anomalies that we see often. So getting that data in before that snapshot is really going to give you the opportunity to see what we think, if that's how you want to look at it. And at that point, you can make that determination of whether or not that data is correct or not. The choice is yours. We don't require any type of response for getting these data quality messages. Like, we don't need institutions or entities telling us, hey, this isn't wrong. It's just giving you more information than you had before. In the post-collection, while CEPI does not advertise the fact that we do offer reopens, we do give you the opportunity to correct potential anomalies, just because most of our deadlines are based off of statutory requirements or organizational requirements when we need that data to be in our systems. That way we can start processing it. So I know that a lot of school districts, they save the data quality messages from each iteration. So they, schools submit to us 3 times per year for most collections, and they save those data quality messages between collections just to make sure that, these anomalies that CEPI points out aren't getting worse, or maybe even better yet, like, hey, maybe this actually is a problem because CEPI's pointed this out for the past 3 years. It's just kind of like the UIC slides that I gave earlier about resolution. It's not that anything's necessarily wrong. It's just giving you more information than you had before. So the data quality messages are a great service that CEPI offers, but it's not necessarily something that you have to take action on. So it's just giving you more information than you had before.
Okay. So we'll move into my school data for 2018 to see what's going on there. We had the 2016-17 post-secondary success rate data update. This went out in May. What was new with the report this year is we included subgroups. So we had the race, ethnicity, and gender breakdowns included in the success rates this year. We also have our interactive report for success rates that now kind of replaced having those Excel spreadsheets posted on the website. You can still download those reports through the interactive report, which is nice, and it seems to be working well. If you have any questions about that functionality, you can always reach out to CEPI customer support or My School Data or myself, and we can make sure that you have help with those. This July, we are expecting the workforce outcomes data to be updated on the My School Data website. So if you ever went to our website and looked at the workforce reports that were on there before, I think there was like maybe 10 different links to the reports.
Can I pause you for 1 second? So we got a question kind of going back to data quality. So when correcting errors, I do know that in other MSDS collections that it's a append and replace, where the last submitted upload is the file that has that student's information that's going to be reported. Does the STARR work the same way? Say that you know, Trevor Youngquist, my student record has a data quality anomaly reported to it. Would you re-upload me, or would you delete me and then re-upload the entire collection? Like, what's the best way to do that?
So you can do it student by student, but if you'd have to upload the entire student record if you're trying to update anything on that student record. So if you upload just partial information, it's going to replace that whole record. So,
but you don't have to re-upload your whole collection.
Not your whole collection.
So you could just take out the students that you want to correct, and then have that be a separate upload, and it would update that student's record. Right. Okay. Just make sure that everything is included in the student record when you upload it again. Carry on. Okay. So there were like 10 different reports for those workforce outcomes data, and we met with the people over at the Workforce Development Agency, and we went through those reports, and as a team we were able to either get rid of some of them or consolidate them and redesign them into different, more meaningful reports. So I would encourage you to, in July, look for those on our website to see what we came up with and what type of information is out there now. So with the new Michigan post-secondary data inventory collection for the community colleges, we'll be now publishing those reports on the website. So the collection actually opens July 2nd for the community college tuition and fees, and the other financial or instructional activity information, that collection opens in August and closes in November. But we will be producing all of those reports and publishing them on the My School Data website from now on, so they'll no longer be located on the michigancc.net website. And those are going to be some revamped reports. It's going to be looking a lot better, and the whole process has been really well for the community colleges. Another thing that we'll be producing in December would be the awards conferred report. So this is going to be any award that was conferred at a college or university in the previous academic year, and we'll be posting that by award level. And there's some other variations that are included in that. We haven't totally designed that report yet, but it will be a new one that we are posting on My School Data this year as well. Some of the ongoing projects that we have between STEPI and our partners. So we work with the Department of Treasury quite regularly. We were measuring post-secondary outcomes for students that have been granted Michigan's competitive scholarship, tuition grant, and the tuition incentive program, which is a TIP. So anything that basically that a student can get a grant or scholarship from with the Department of Treasury, we are looking at those students and to see how they're doing, like how they're progressing and how those grants or scholarships are helping them to progress. Those haven't been discussed, like we haven't discussed publishing them on the website yet, but there are certain things that we might be able to look at as long as it's just at that aggregate level. But Department of Treasury is definitely digging into those to look at them, and the legislators or state budget office people have been interested to see how those programs are doing as well. We were able to help out the promise zones to fill their state mandated reporting. So there was some legislation that was added last year requiring promise zones to figure out what the successful outcome measures are for students who are receiving those promise zone grants. CEPI was able to work with them to get the business requirements together, get the reports
for them so that they're now able to submit that for their state reporting mandate.
Can we pause for a question? So the question is, how will awards conferred differ from what is submitted in HIDE?
So we haven't actually looked at what's being submitted in HIDE at a closer level. It's something that we would like to start looking at, but this was primarily focused on the community college reporting requirement. Even though we did have like the House and Senate fiscal and state budget office people in the room when we were looking at these things, we haven't looked at how the awards conferred differs from the HIDE collection compared to our now what we're going to be doing and pulling from STARR. But Mary, thank you for that was Mary, right? Thank you for pointing that out because it's something I'm going to look into now because I hadn't actually thought of that. So we will definitely look at that, and I might even contact you to help me out. That's it. All right. So we mentioned earlier that the independent colleges are going to be required to report their student level data to STARR, and that's related to the TIP and Pell requirement. So we've been working with them a lot with different trainings, just like the one that we're doing here, but in person, trying to get them up to speed and learning what they need to do for UIC and STARR to make sure that that goes smoothly. We're going to be taking a deeper dive looking at the National Student Clearinghouse data. There's been some inconsistencies, I guess, with what we receive from them, depending on when we submit our student file to them, we get differing results back. So it's something that we wanted to dig into to make sure that we're not missing anything or that the data that we're pulling into our longitudinal data system is accurate. Just something that we wanted to point out that we want to start looking at that closer. You're probably aware that the My School data has gone through a redesign. They're still working on that. Anytime things change in the future, though, I know that something that we got some feedback on from the colleges was that they would like to hear about it in advance or when it's happening so that it's not a surprise. So that's something that our portal team is definitely going to be working on in the future. Part of that redesign is the way that the layout of the website itself. If you remember in the past, all of the links used to be on the left-hand side, and now they're all located at the top. And for the post-secondary reports, you're going to go to the second to the last link at the top, and that's where you're going to find all of your reports, either by post-secondary outcomes by high school or the other ones that are by college. We've added quite a few reports in here. I think over the past few years, it's grown quite a bit. And you can, I can't remember what's on my slides here. Okay, so for the post-secondary outcomes by high school, so all of those reports in the light gray column are reports by high school. So we have your enrollment by high school, the college enrollment destination, which is a really cool report. That report basically will tell you, it can help either the high school or the college when you pull this. You can pull your the high schools that most frequently feed your college students. If you pull that up, it's going to show all of the colleges that those students are enrolling at. So you can see where you might want to do some more marketing or going to talk to those students more if you want to get more students from that high school. Interesting. We also have the 24 college credit report. This is a report that is showing you, an indicator of if the student is going to be continuing in college or not. So the thought process on that is that if they complete 24 college credits within a year, then that's a good indicator that they're going to be progressing through and earning a successful outcome. That report will show you that. We have the remedial coursework report, and then another one that I like is the college progression by graduating class, which I think I'll be showing you in a minute here. And here is the college undergraduate enrollment snapshot. So this one is the actual college side. So if you pull up your college, here it's showing us a statewide look at all community colleges and the enrollment by category. So you can see the enrollment counts by the age differentiation and whether or not they're degree seeking or non-degree seeking or prior year Michigan high school graduates. And this is looking at the trends, so you can look at the enrollment trend status for those colleges as well. I kind of want to go into my school data. Let me see how much time we got. A little bit. I'm going to go into my school data real quick because I think it's easier to look at them than doing the PowerPoint on it. So when you go into the dashboard, you'll see a parent dashboard, which is new for school transparency. This is mainly like K-12 related. I'm going to skip that and just go to our post-secondary reports right now. Kelsey's Hecker is way better at showing the my school data, but I try to do what I can, even though I'm not the expert. So in here, college enrollment by high school. I'm going to pick on schools in our area because I know them better. If I wanted to look at, let's see, let's just say Holtz High School. Holt Public Schools. And then we'll just look at Holt Senior High. And go down here. So you're going to want to choose the high school graduation year. So let's go with 15-16. All college types by category. And then time to enrollment. Say all years. I'm not sure what that's going to show us, but for category. No, we go back. Gotta play with it a little bit. Been a minute since I've played with these reports.
Try a different school.
Right.
Do Everett. Or
How's that? I'm going to try us. All right, here we go. Let's see if this works. Okay, so for all the schools within the Lansing Public School District, this will show you how many students enrolled in college within 6 months. This is at both colleges and universities. And then it splits it up with just how many enrolled within 6 months at the community college. Oh, oops, I'm sorry, this is the 4-year colleges up here. And then the community colleges and then total. If you go down, the data table will show you the total count of high school graduates and then the count in percentage. So you'll see that in 2014, 614 students graduated from Lansing Public Schools. Of that, 248 enrolled in a community college within 6 months, and 118 enrolled in a 4-year institution within 6 months. And if we stay with this population and go back and we'll look at the college progression by graduating class, but I'm going to select a different year because I like this report the way it looks. If you go back far enough, I want to look at all students. So here we're looking at the 2010-11 cohort. So if they graduated in 2010-11, the first year that they would have enrolled in college would be 11-12. So here we can see that 451 students, or 72% of those students who graduated in a 10-11 year, enrolled in college for the first time their first year. And then it shows the progression up to 8 years. And this orange area, this is showing 335 of those students are continuing. 107 of those students were no longer enrolled. And then these other little areas, some of them had earned a certificate, but they're still continuing. So as you can see, the population is either the ones that aren't enrolled anymore is growing, or they are continuing, and then some of them are earning their successful outcomes. So they earned a 2-year degree, or they earned a 4-year degree. So this was like our first actual kind of like our successful student report. I think this is one of my favorites. Then if you go up and let's look at some of the post-secondary by college. So our college transfer report, we're going to look at all colleges, 15, 16, transfers by college. So for this report, you can look at, actually, let me go back. I'm going to look specifically at college type. So okay, so if you're looking at this report, it's going to show you at Oakland Community College, 5,888 students transferred to all from Oakland.
So they transferred out.
Sorry, I'm going to change this. Okay. So 2,242 students transferred to a 2-year from Oakland Community College. And then over here, it says that 1,240 students transferred from a 2-year to Oakland Community College. To a 2-year from Oakland. From a 2-year to Oakland. So, and you'll see that you can see the community colleges are with the slanted line. The independents are that solid blue line, and our public universities are the lighter solid blue line. If you click on one in particular, one of the results, it'll take you to another screen to give you a breakout of some demographic information. So it'll show you the race, ethnicity. So 494 students transferred to a 2-year from Oakland that were white. You can look at the gender, and then also a grade point average. So the average GPA earned by 2-year students transferring from Oakland University is 2.70. And this would be if you need to find out some specifics about the data, you can go up here to About This Report, About the Data, and for instance, if you want to know about the GPA, what is that calculated on, or what does it represent? In here you can find answers to those questions. I'm trying to see where is the answer to that? Okay, so right here, the cumulative GPA earned at an institution at the end of a student's first semester after transferring, separated into the number or percent of students. So it's at the end of the student's first semester after transferring is what you'll be seeing here for the GPA. And then all of the information is also located in the data table at the bottom if you like to see the numbers better than the graph. Let's look at our success rates report real quick. So on the success rates, if you go to that page, it's going to give you the community college success rates, the university success rates. You can see here that over time, the success is rising for our community colleges. Looks like it's about even for our universities. Over here, you can see based on the year that the student entered higher education. So once they're placed in the cohort where we start to calculate their success in 2009-10, the success rate for community college for the whole state after 2 years is 18.9. But as you see, as you're getting up here into the 4th year, 36, and all the way to 6 years is 43. I think what we're learning from looking at these success rates is that traditional look, it takes a student 2 years to get an associate's or 4 years to get a bachelor's isn't the same anymore, based on like lifestyles of people, you know, working full time or having children at home. It's not as feasible possibly as to go that route of a traditional way of earning your post-secondary successes. And this is a little bit of proof to show that. For our 4 years, you'll see that for that 2009-10 success rate, we can measure that out to 8 years. And after a 4-year time period, that success rate is at 43%. And as we're going through, it rises at the 8-year to 74.9%. So when we're talking about successes, I'll go back up just a little bit. How we measure successes for the community colleges, we have one success. Once your student reaches that success, it's always a success. So they could either earn a certificate, earn an associate's degree, transfer to a 4-year university or 4-year institution, or earn a bachelor's degree. So all of those are counted as a success. For a university, successes are measured by a student earning a certificate, an associate's degree, or a bachelor's degree. And we see that we're able to identify more ways that a student can receive and benefit from going to college by looking at all of those different successes that are available. We also have under other and data files, this is where you can find the student pathways report that I was talking about. So the student pathways data file is the secure login report that will give you basically all of the information on a student that's been submitted in STARR. We have a few data elements in there from the high school, like those assessment scores and where they graduated high school, stuff like that. But as long as a student has been enrolled in your institution, you'll be able to look at that student record and student pathways to see every institution that they've attended in Michigan. What we're trying to work on moving forward is adding the K-12 course history into student pathways as well. So we've been collecting that data here for a few years from the K-12 institutions. The one caveat to that is that there's only certain populations of students that are required to be submitted in that course level data collection for K-12 now. So if those students are either dual enrolled or in an early middle college or a migrant student,
Virtual student.
or a virtual student, then those students are required to be submitted with course information, and they'd have to include all course information, not just those that fall within those categories. So moving forward, hopefully within the next year or two, we'll be incorporating that into the student pathways data file. So be on the lookout for that. I think that's really exciting news. And we're also going to be looking at those students who are dual enrolled or in early middle colleges to see how those programs are working, if it's successful for the students, and how they are progressing and earning those successful outcomes as well. So those are some exciting things that we're going to be looking at in the future, and I'm really excited about that. I think that's about it for the My Login, or for the My School Data website that I wanted to go over today. If there's any questions about that, feel free to log them in. Let me see where we're at here. So we've reached the end. This PowerPoint presentation is going to be available afterwards with the recording. And of course, if you have any questions related to the EEM, UIC, STARR, or our reports on My School Data, you can feel free to reach out to Trevor or I. We're always willing to help out or forward it along to someone else that could help you out. So with that, if there's any questions, feel free to ask. If we don't see anything come through within the next few minutes, then we can probably wrap it up for the day.
So I think that we'll stay on the line on mute until noon, and if anyone else wants to stick around with us just to see if there's any other discussion that people want to present, we'll be here until noon. But if not, we really appreciate everyone's time. I know that it is summertime, it's nice out, so we really appreciate people's time and attention, and also the input of questions as well. That really helps to kind of give depth to our presentation. And with us speaking to an empty room, it lets us know that people are paying attention. So thank you much.
Well, thank you, Seppi. Appreciate you doing this for us, and we'll look forward to talking with you next time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
So it looks like we haven't gotten any questions, so me and Rachel are going to head out here, but feel free to reach out if need be, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their week. Thanks.